Welcome to This Explainer. Okay, today we are going to completely flip how you look at the universe. We're tossing out those static, rigid illusions we've been fed for centuries, and we're diving headfirst into the reality of continuous, dynamic movement. Look, if you've ever felt like your life is just a series of relentless waves, well, you're actually way more aligned with cosmic truth than you might realize.
To really get this, we've got to start at the absolute grandest scale imaginable. Picture the cosmos as this vast, ancient ocean of energy. In the grand history of literally everything, from the Big Bang onwards, forms just come and go. They're like these fleeting, temporary waves on the surface of an ocean. Galaxies, stars, planets, and yeah, even our own human bodies. We emerge from this energy, we hold a shape for just a brief moment, and then, eventually, we dissolve right back into it.
Now, that obviously brings up a massive, incredibly high-stakes question. If the second law of thermodynamics is true, the idea that absolutely everything eventually breaks down into random chaos, then why are we even here? If the universe is just totally indifferent, what is the actual point of all this incredibly intricate, beautiful existence?
Section 1. The myth of stasis. Let's jump right in and dismantle a deeply ingrained philosophical illusion that has been clouding our understanding for a really long time.
So, for centuries, a huge chunk of Western thought was built on this idea from ancient Greek philosophy, specifically from Aristotle. He essentially taught us that divine perfection meant being completely static. He called it the unmoved mover. Think of a pristine marble statue, right? Perfect, but entirely frozen. Under this old-school view, any kind of change was seen as a flaw. The logic was, if you're changing, it means you just aren't perfect yet. But honestly, when we actually look at the universe, that idea couldn't be further from the truth.
Instead, let's look at the alternative here, dynamic perfection. Brilliant thinkers like the 14th century Islamic philosopher Ibn Taymiyyah and even modern process philosophers hit the nail on the head. They realized that perpetual living motion is actually the true essence of existence. Perfection isn't some dead, silent stop sign at the end of the road. It's an ongoing process of continuous growth. It's an eternal open summit. And what that means is there is always room for more beauty, more complexity, and deeper awareness.
Moving on to Section 2, Cycles of Cosmic Evolution. Let's actually see how this dynamic perfection builds across the physical universe.
Because this isn't just some abstract, pie-in-the-sky philosophical theory. It is the literal universal law of reality. Just look at the timeline of existence. It starts all the way back with the subatomic dance of protons and electrons interacting, almost 14 billion years ago. Then, fast forward to the perpetual metabolism of the very first living cells, to the sudden spark of human consciousness, right up to the unceasing expansion of the cosmos we see today. Every single level of reality is this upward dynamic process born from the interaction of opposing forces. It's a continuous, unstoppable wave of emergence.
And quantum physics completely backs this up today. At its absolute deepest levels, matter is probabilistic. It's dynamic. There are literally no truly silent or perfectly static objects anywhere in the universe. Everything is vibrating. Everything is a process. Existence itself is, fundamentally, an action.
All right, Section 3. Materialism versus spirituality. Let's zoom in from that massive cosmic scale down to the human scale and take a look at how we've historically wrestled with all this constant movement.
When trying to figure out our place in this wild universe, human thought has often splintered off into two pretty flawed extremes. On one hand, we have a very traditional Western focus on material reality, basically a dominance of bodily intelligence, that often just entirely neglects the spirit. On the other hand, we see certain Eastern philosophies that focus on pure spirit. In those, the ultimate goal is often to dissolve the individual entirely and treat the physical body like it's just an illusion or a hurdle to jump over.
The problem? Neither of these extremes actually works on its own. Materialism just hits a massive brick wall at the hard problem of consciousness. It absolutely cannot explain why we actually have a subjective inner experience. It gives us a solid presence in the physical world, sure, but absolutely no way to transcend it. Conversely, pure spiritualism tries to just silence all that bodily noise, which honestly leads to withdrawing from reality rather than mastering it. You literally can't surf the wave if you're pretending the water itself doesn't exist.
Which brings us to Section 4, the Barzakh alternative. The crucial point here is that we have to find a third path.
We need a summit that doesn't just weakly compromise between the two sides, but actually towers above both extremes to give us the full picture. Arabic philosophy offers a seriously brilliant concept for this. It's called the Barzakh.
Think of the Barzakh as a living intermediary. It's the dynamic interaction between two opposing poles, like the body and the spirit, or the physical and the metaphysical. It harmonizes them into an interactive duality without letting either one erase or dominate the other. It's kind of like how an atom needs both the positive proton and the negative electron to actually be stable. In the exact same way, human consciousness needs the friction and interaction of both body and spirit to truly thrive.
And implementing this framework brings incredible results. By fully integrating the bodily intellect and the spirit intellect, the Barzakh creates what's called a unity of witnessing. What that means is you don't lose yourself. You get to maintain your distinct, unique identity, interacting dynamically with the physical world while simultaneously witnessing the much deeper spiritual truths behind it. You aren't trapped in some cold, lifeless, materialist worldview, but you don't just dissolve your identity into nothingness either.
And finally, Section 5, the human goal. How exactly do we bring this grand, cosmic, and philosophical framework down to our messy, intimate, daily human experience?
Well, the very first step is humility. History and existence itself moves in these natural cycles of rise and fall, light and dark, ease and hardship. We have to be really careful to avoid the trap of confusing our own personal duty with the grand cosmic outcome. When we mix those up, we fall into the arrogance of wanting to decide the fate of the universe ourselves. But our goal isn't to force the universe's hand or try to stop the waves from crashing. It's simply to master our personal duty and master our reactions to those waves. In fact, good and evil in our daily lives are often defined simply by how we choose to react to the cycle. There's this profoundly beautiful historical hadith that provides the perfect emotional anchor here. It says, "Wondrous is the affair of the believer. When a happy occurrence comes his way, he shows gratitude, and when a hurtful occurrence befalls him, he shows patience." Guys, this is the literal definition of dynamic perfection in human conduct. It tells us that true psychological resilience comes from dynamically reacting to life's wave-like movements. You don't just stand static and take it. You ride the crest of the wave with gratitude, and you navigate the deep troughs with patience.
So in a universe where entropy is eventually going to dissolve absolutely all physical structures, what actually matters? It's your individual growth. Building up your intellectual knowledge, your spiritual resilience through life's trials, your emotional maturity, and constantly harmonizing your physical and spiritual selves. That is literally the only lasting legacy you can build. It's a lifelong process, an open summit where we are just continuously expanding our capacity to understand and to endure.
I'm going to leave you with this thought to reflect on today. The universe is not a static, dusty museum. It is a relentless, spectacularly beautiful wave of change. So, are you going to rigidly fight it, just waiting around for things to hold perfectly still? Or will you learn to balance your body and spirit, paddle out, and finally surf the wave? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep learning, keep growing, and whatever you do, keep moving.